afternoon. This is Mark's Musings, and I'm Mark, and we are here at WCTV in Wilmington, Massachusetts, and we are taping another program of Mark's Musings where we interview various authors, and we talk about their writing and some of the things that they may be interested in. Today, we are pleased to have with us an author by the name of Goodman Kaufman. Good afternoon, Carol.
Good afternoon, Mark. Thanks so much for inviting me here.
It's so wonderful to have you here. I noticed it's been so sunny this summer and so hot, but now I think we're in for some weather this afternoon. What do you think?
Well, it was already starting to sprinkle as we drove in, and
Yes.
Luckily we avoided the storm. But we came into the studio with umbrellas.
A preparation. That was good. Well, I hope that we won't be deluged with too much of a problem with the storm. The weather can really turn quickly, so we'll see if we can get by this. So I'm glad to have you here. I noticed that you've had a different career. Besides cooking, you've started off. Well, tell me a little bit about your other background or career, and then we'll go into the cooking part.
Okay, in a previous life, I trained as an industrial and organizational psychologist.
Oh, great.
Well, it's okay. I did enjoy the teaching. Didn't particularly enjoy working in industry. I'm not a corporate type person.
Yes.
Then one day I had an epiphany and decided, well, I shouldn't waste all the training and research, so I went and did a postdoctoral fellowship in criminology.
Oh, yes.
And for several years wrote about violence. Domestic violence, youth violence in schools, and then I did a study on violent extremists.
Wow.
I wrote the first draft of the book and never went beyond it. I had had enough of violence.
Yes.
And all along I had been very involved with food.
Yes.
Cooking and gardening, baking, ever since I had been a teenager. So one day, my rabbi called me and said, Lily and Jonah think that lettuce comes from the store wrapped in cellophane. I know that you do a lot of gardening. Would you mind bringing them into your garden?
Oh, great.
My kids were grown at this point. I went and bought one of those Fisher Price or whatever brand it was, toy gardening set, and brought the kids over. And it occurred to me as we were planting.
How old were these kids?
Oh, young, very young.
Yeah.
And it occurred to me, where did these things come from? Where did the eggplant come from? Where did the tomatoes come from?
Yes.
They didn't just come from the plant or the seed. They came from someplace originally. And as I want to do, I became a little obsessed and started really looking at the research and
the origin.
I really had a lot of fun. I mean, it wasn't just where the foods came from; it was how they got to where they ended up. For example, peanuts.
Oh, yes.
And if you've ever read Paddington Bear,
Yes.
you wonder, why did Aunt Lucy send Paddington Bear to England, of all places, when these wonderful foods grow in the Andes, such as peanuts?
Oh, yes.
So peanuts went all over the world, and then, in addition to that, they were adopted by various cultures around the world, and then adapted to their own needs, and incorporated into everything from jewelry to poetry. There's haiku written in the 17th century to the eggplant. Haiku. Obviously, there's a reason people fall in love with foods.
Sure.
But they really make much more of that food than simply eating it.
Yes.
And so I started doing that, and I've been working on developing recipes from around the world.
That is wonderful. My God. Yes. I wondered where your name of your website came from when you say that it's called Peanut Peregrinations. Yes.
Well, the peanut traveled all over. It wandered.
Is
around.
that what the word peregrinations infers?
You're a chemistry professor, right? Not in English. I have a cousin who's a writer also, and she doesn't like the title, but at this point, this is the title of the book.
That is terrific. So now you are accumulating all of your experiences with food, and you are in the process of putting a book together.
Yes. Yeah, the book will be part food history and part cookbook. So the background, the history, and the different literature, folklore, poetry, jewelry, pottery, all those aspects of the food will be included in the first part of the chapter. And then the second part of the chapter will include about a dozen recipes for that food product from around the world. So there'll be Chinese eggplant, there will be Spanish eggplant, there will be Lebanese eggplant.
Oh,
From
yes.
all over.
Wow. And you're probably thinking about a year from now or something where the book is going to be available, or
Well,
you're still working on it?
I'm hoping to finish it by the end of the year, but I'm also looking for an agent.
Oh, that's, I know. That is so difficult. Sometime you want to either self-publish or you want to go and with an agent and go to a book company. So that's a hard decision to make, and you need to work that out yourself, because there are so many questions that you want to try to answer. But that's great that you're accumulating all this information. So you have a website that I noticed, and I started to I clicked on that when you gave me that information, and it basically says similar that you love food and you love travel. So you have traveled a little bit to observe some of these foods, and as you've traveled?
Yeah, we've been very fortunate. I've been to Cuba, I've been to Poland, I've been to Jordan, I've been to Israel several times, been to Italy, England. I love
Nice.
to travel. We love to travel, and I love to eat, so
Yeah.
we get to experiment.
And you told me also your children are traveling now too, so they're probably bringing back ideas from the places that they have traveled to.
Yes, actually, it's kind of funny. My daughter and her husband, he's an academic, and he goes off to do research in various places. And they were in Brazil.
Oh.
I needed an ingredient in order to make a particular recipe, whose name is escaping me at the moment. But I can't find that ingredient anywhere, even online here.
Yeah.
So I mentioned it to her. I said, "Do you think when you're down here you could pick up this ingredient and bring it home with you?" And she found it, and she wrote me an email and said, "Mom, are you sure you want me to bring a little plastic baggie of white powder back with me?"
I know, they'll probably stop you for that if they found it.
Yeah, it turned out it was perfectly legal. It was, I can't even remember what the substance was. Yeah, so they do travel and they bring things back.
Now that sounds. I noticed you also read something in your website that you said you have your own blog, a movable feast.
Yes.
What does that mean, movable feast?
Well, I've stolen that from Ernest Hemingway. Was it Ernest Hemingway who wrote that?
Yeah.
I just stole the name, and I thought that would be a good name because
So
food is movable.
So food, okay. So that's the point there, that it can move around in different types of foods and different holidays and things like that. So that's super. So that's what I saw out of your. And then you like to forage for foods too. You said you want to go and pick it yourself. So you go to. Where would you forage for foods, for instance?
Well, the most recently foraged foods are wild grape leaves. Because they make fabulous stuffed grape leaves, much better than the stuff in the jar.
Now that would be locally that you would do that, or
Sure.
Oh,
sure,
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And sumac. I just got a really good harvest of sumac. You have to be careful with that. It's not poison sumac.
No.
And poison sumac doesn't look at all like edible sumac. It's a wonderful spice used in Middle Eastern cooking, Mediterranean cooking. It's bright red, deep, almost claret, beautiful. You just have to make sure you wait for it to be red, but not too long, because then it can be infested with worms, with little wiggly worms. So I got a great harvest a couple weeks ago, and it's drying now.
Are these little plants, or are they trees?
Oh, they're trees. You'll see them big,
Okay.
beautiful red. It almost looks as if they're Christmas ornaments.
And they grow locally, yeah.
all over.
Oh,
all over.
wow, interesting.
And
yeah.
That's delicious. And what else? Oh, I've been working on the chapter about carrots. And Queen Anne's lace
I noticed that.
is the wild version of the carrot.
The origin of a carrot, yeah. When I saw that in your blog, I said, "Oh, what?" Because I used to when I did some nature studies with some of my students, we went out into the woods and we would identify different plants, and Queen Anne's lace was always one of the ones that I said, now there's some Queen Anne's lace over there, and they said, oh great, they like the puffy flower that they
Right.
did.
That's the second year. It's a biennial plant, so if you pull the what you eat is the taproot. A carrot is a taproot.
Oh, yes, yes.
So it's only about this long, and on radio you obviously can't see how long that is.
Yeah.
And maybe 3 inches, 4 inches.
Yeah.
And it has a tough core. And
Yeah.
if you, number one, you don't want to eat the tough core, so you have to pull it out, which means you would need probably a bushel full in order to make a side dish for a family of 4. But you don't want to take it from the second year when you can see the Queen Anne's lace. You want the first year plant will be much more tender.
Yes.
So around the time of a frost, you'll look around at the base of the Queen Anne's lace and you'll see the same kind of foliage. And you just pull that up and you'll see the little white taproot, which white was the original color of a wild carrot.
Isn't that something? Yeah, that's a very nice piece of information that we can tell to our listeners. Very good. I notice also that you have you told a little story here about making some spices, and that the king or the king involved sent out his minions to go look for some spices, and this guy was so nervous that he went to the market and he was jabbering. He needed some spice, and what did he do?
Well, the king was sending his servant to the market, but at the same time the queen was sending him to the market, and he got a little behind time and he got nervous, very nervous, and he didn't want to displease the king, who could be very violent if he wasn't happy. So he went to the spice merchant and said, please give me, I need spices, and just give me something of a bit of everything. And he put it into a package and brought it home, and that night the chef made couscous with this ras el hanout, which means head of the shop.
Oh.
In other words, the best of the shop. And the chef and the servant both were quaking in their boots because they did not want to displease the king. And the king was so pleased. He said, I've never had anything so delicious. Every night I want my couscous to be made like this. So ras el hanout was born. And the thing is, everybody has a different recipe for these mixtures. There's another one called hawaj, which is another mixture of many, many spices. Yes. And depending on the recipe, it can be really good or it can not be so great. So I have two. I made the mistake of forgetting to mark 1 and 2 on the 2 hawaj mixtures I made, and I don't want to throw the stuff out, but because I have made quite a bit, and I can't remember which one. I liked the second one, but I neglected to put a star on it and say this is the good one, and so you have to be careful.
So, I mean, I hate to spoil it, but it sounds like Mrs. Dash, but not. It's
quite.
not Mrs. Dash,
Oh,
because she has a mixture of different
Right.
spices too. But
Right.
but yours is quite authentic, and it's nice the way you pronounced it. I was going to say ras el hanout. So
Well, you could be right. I don't speak Arabic. My daughter does. I do not speak Arabic.
Well, that's quite a story. It's nice. You have to have the right amount of seasonings whenever you cook something. It's not just cooking it plain, because it's the seasonings that bring out the flavor.
Absolutely, but you know, I don't understand why people use super hot peppers. There are peppers that actually are regulated by the government in terms of their heat. To me, that destroys the flavor of the food.
Oh yes,
It's like music that's too loud.
Yes,
it
yes.
destroys
It's too
melody.
Yeah, I have a brother-in-law who loves jalapeno peppers, and he just wants that in all of his foods, and he's just spoiling the taste of the food if the jalapeno is overpowering everything. Well, that's wonderful. That's very good. I noticed that you also publish in some of your recipes, and you do reviews of cookbooks and cooks in different local papers like the Berkshire Jewish Voice,
Right.
or the Worcester Gazette, or the various local magazines. So, do you have a regular column, say, in some of those magazines, or do you just send stories?
I do freelance work for other magazines and newspapers, but I have a regular column in Jewish Press.
Oh, okay.
That's food history with a Jewish taste, for
Yes.
example, with biblical quotations, that kind of thing. And I also have a regular column on general food history in the Worcester Worcester Living magazine,
Oh,
which
okay.
is part of Worcester Telegram and Gazette.
Oh, nice, yes. And okay, very good. And then I noticed you on your Facebook page here, you have a picture of you on a cooking show with another woman, and you talk a little bit about the food that you're making, potato salad and in the veggie bowl with peanut sauce. I
Right.
guess.
That was the peanut. We were talking about peanuts that day.
That day, yeah.
And the other two, I think we've done wild food. I've done sumac with her and stuffed grape leaves. But yeah, that was the peanut day.
So she is Anna Gershenson,
Right. She has a show called The Natural Cook.
and where is that locally? Is that in Worcester area?
That's out in the Berkshires.
In the Berkshires.
Right.
Okay, yeah, because I haven't seen that in the local Boston area. So
It appears on community television around New England, and there's in Vermont, in I think Hampshire County, Hampshire County.
nice, very good. Okay, yeah. And then I noticed there is another. You are a guest on Mystery Lover's Kitchen.
Oh. Yes, I also am trying my hand at mystery writing. It's probably my favorite type of reading.
That's great, yeah. I've been doing some writing myself, and I can talk to you more about it later. But in fact, I think one of our mutual friends, Jane
Jay Willen, yeah.
Willen, has written some mystery books, and
Yes.
so that was one of the last ones that I had written. I read, and that was very interesting. And she also has some cooking in that
Right.
in that book too. So let me see some other things here. Tell us a little bit about some of your dishes. I notice you have one of the things you're making here is Haman's fingers.
Haman's fingers, yes.
What
That's from the Jewish holiday of Purim.
is that, like a knish or something? Or
No,
is
this
it-
is very sweet. Oh, it's delicious.
Oh,
Absolutely
oh,
delicious.
okay,
Oh
okay.
my goodness, it's wonderful. I made it with a group, and we did a cooking demonstration. Purim is a holiday in which Haman is the evil vizier. The short story is he's found out and he's booted out. But the traditional food that most American Jews know is Hamantaschen. You can buy them in any bakery today, year-round.
Yes.
It's a triangular pastry filled with usually poppy seed filling or prune, apricot, something like that.
Oh yes.
And they're delicious. But I wanted to try something new, so I said, let's try Haman's fingers, which comes from some totally different part of the world, and and they're delicious, made with phyllo dough, and just
What's the filling? What is it?
chopped nuts and currants or raisins. And
Oh, okay.
Honey and it's just scrumptious.
Nice. Another dish I see that you make is Israeli fish kebabs.
Yes.
That looks delicious too. Yes.
Very good. Very easy and absolutely delicious.
I noticed you mixed in the recipe ingredients. You've mixed two types of fish,
Yes.
tilapia and haddock.
Yeah.
Is that needed, or could it be just one type of fish, or?
You could do one of. You could use cod and tilapia, cod and haddock. Mix it up, but whitefish, a mild whitefish.
Oh, okay.
Because the spices really, that's the one that has the ras el hanout in it, isn't it?
Yes, it does. Yes.
That really gives it a fabulous flavor.
Yeah.
And you really feel as if you're in the Middle East when you're eating it. It's delicious.
I noticed that you make is a mixture, not only the hanout mixture of spices, but also you have paprika and pepper and curcumin and pine nuts, and so you have a lot of other ingredients that you've put into the mix too. And it sounds delicious. And then you top it off with an after drink, which is coffee rather, with ice cream.
Iced café. That's something I drank many, many, many years ago when I lived in Israel. You'd get a tall glass with hot coffee, and then put a scoop of very creamy vanilla ice cream in it. It was absolutely delicious.
Now the hot coffee wouldn't it starts to melt the ice cream a little bit, but
yes.
it's and it is sweet because of the ice cream.
Right.
Oh, you don't have to sweeten the coffee.
Well, I mean, I suppose you could if you really like
want.
sugar.
Yeah. Well, that is now you talk about walking down the streets of Israel in some of your blogs here. Give us a little flavor of that. If you've been to Israel, you've walking down some of the main streets. What do you see?
Well, my first time there, I lived there for a year, and I had been reading the book by Nikos Kazantzakis, The Last Temptation of Christ.
Yes.
And in the book, there's a scene in which Jesus plucks an olive the size of an apple.
Oh,
I still
boy.
remember this. I mean, I was 19 years old when I read this. And he eats it, sits under the tree and eats it. And I thought, ooh, that sounds wonderful. Well, olive trees grow on the streets. They're everywhere. So I said, okay, I'm going to pick an olive. Not a good idea. An olive picked off the tree is very bitter.
Bitter, yes.
Very hard, very bitter. Olives really need to be treated. They need to be brined or put in olive oil, whatever, but they need to be treated. So I learned my lesson, and that book was total fiction.
Okay.
At least as far as olives are concerned.
Yeah. So it wasn't that delicious.
Things zatar, there's an herbal mixture called zatar, which is from hyssop and a variety of other things, but the actual hyssop is called zatar also, and it's that's something that is very popular to put on pita bread. You take like a flatter pita bread called laffa, and you pour olive oil on it, and then sprinkle zatar on it. It's absolutely delicious. You can find those at Middle Eastern markets and bakeries around here. It's just delicious.
Well, tell us about a favorite recipe you might have.
Oh my! How do I narrow it down?
Narrow it down.
The most recent one I make is the one I love the most, I suppose. Gee, you've stumped me. You've stumped me.
Yeah.
Oh no, here's a really easy one. You take carrots and peel them and cut them into, on an angle, in like 1.5 inch pieces, 1 to 1.5 inch pieces, and you toss them with a little bit of olive oil, salt, pepper, and thyme.
Oh.
And then you roast them. You roast the bejeebers out of them until they caramelize. And no matter how many pounds of carrots I make for dinner, there's never a single piece of carrot left.
Now, is it sweet or
it's sweet and savory.
Okay, so the thyme brings it savory taste.
And the caramelization from roasting it so hot.
Wow.
Oh, it's absolutely delicious.
So that's a side. That would be like a side dish.
Yes.
Yes.
But if I have people for dinner, I'll make a big, big tray of it, and there's never any left. And it's super easy to make, so you can do it during the week.
Tell us a little bit about. You have a little article in your blog about every mushroom is edible, but some only once.
Yes. I did not make up that quote,
Yeah.
but I loved it. I always loved it.
That is so terrific.
Yeah, I have been on a couple wild food foraging classes, little tours, walking tours, and I've done one specifically for mushrooms. I am a little too nervous to pick myself, except for mushrooms that have absolutely no twins. And there's one that my son-in-law, my daughter and son-in-law found in Vermont hiking around this time of year. It's called the lion's head mane, or bear tooth head.
Yes.
And it looks like the ice that comes down on the side of rocks along the highway. You see that blue stuff? It's not blue, it's white.
Yeah.
Almost like an ice floe.
Yeah.
And they're huge. He had one that weighed about 2.5 pounds.
Wow.
And he brought it. He happened to mention, we were at a farmer's market, and he approached a man who was selling mushrooms, and he said, I got this 2.5 pound mushroom, and I understand it's safe. And he goes, 2.5 pounds. The man sniffed at him. He said, I have one that's 10 pounds. But they're absolutely edible and absolutely delicious.
Isn't that something?
And they don't look like anything else.
So how would you prepare that? Would you have to cook it, or would you?
Yeah, they sliced it up and sautéed it.
Okay.
With some onions, or
Okay.
Apparently it was delicious.
Yeah, isn't that something? Wow, that is wonderful.
Yeah, otherwise I'm a little too nervous
To try,
to
yeah,
try mushrooming myself.
I think I told you earlier that my when I was younger, I lived in Chelsea, but my cousin lived in Dorchester, and I would sometimes go and sleep over at his house, and his uncle lived next door and said, "Let's go out this morning. We're going to take a hike into the Blue Hills." And so we went out early in the morning, and as we're this is an Italian family, so as we're going off into the woods, he stops and picks some of these mushrooms, and I said to him, "How do you know?" He says, "Well, I've been doing it for such a long time that these are the ones that I feel are safe. But there are some ways you can tell, but I'll let your aunt tell you about it when we get home." So actually, when we got home, I asked my aunt, and I said, Uncle Peter said you can tell about mushrooms if they're edible or not by certain things. So she said, "Oh yes, we have silver $50, they're real silver, and if you put them in the water with the mushrooms and they turn black, then they're poisonous." So I don't know whether that is true or not, but it maybe has some validity, because that's the secret. Maybe she was just living on the skin of her teeth, for all these years. But maybe the blackness has to do with the chemistry of the mushroom and reacting with the silver.
Well, you're the chemist, so you should
I know.
do
I
some
should
research on
figure.
it. Well, actually, one of the wild foraging hikes I went on with an expert, his name is Russ Cohen, and he does a great job. But it was the hike I went on happened to be during a drought, so there was nothing to be had. And one of the people in the group found a mushroom in the ground and held it up and said, "What about this one?"
Oh, yes.
And he looked at it and he said, "Watch this," and he snapped it in half and it turned blue.
Ooh,
Something like out of Harry Potter. And he said, "This is not good."
So the mushroom itself inside turned blue. Oh yes. So when it got exposed to air, that caused it to. Imagine, what an interesting story about how to determine the different types of mushrooms that there are. And I know that they grow now. They grow mushrooms in dark areas in cellars,
Right,
like
yeah.
underneath a house or in a cellar where it's totally black, and the mushrooms grow there because obviously they don't have any chlorophyll. They're fungi and live off of the nutrients in the soil and everything. So
Yeah, I actually bought a mushroom growing kit for my son-in-law as a gift once. He makes his own olives. He's quite the cook. So I got him a set. I've never found out how the mushrooms turned out. I'll have to ask.
Ask him about that. Yes, I love mushrooms. They're very tasty. My wife, not so much, but I love them. I noticed there's also you have another thing in your blog about my non-toxic mushroom barley soup.
Yes.
So I love barley too. So so you have a recipe for that in your blog. Now, if somebody wanted to read your blog, do they go to your Facebook page?
No, my website. The blog is on the website.
Oh, okay.
And actually, I was just talking about, I have to write a new blog post. I haven't done one in a while because I've been so busy with the articles. But this weekend, all my kids were in, and I told them I would not make this particular dish until everybody was together. It's taken me 4 years to grow enough key limes to make key lime pie.
Oh, no.
Because they're tiny. They're tiny.
Yeah.
And you get about a half a teaspoon of juice from each one. So for the past 4 years, I've been growing key limes in my sunroom and saving the juice in the freezer. And this weekend, everybody was together. My 3 kids, their spouses, and all 6 grandchildren. And I made key lime pie. I made 2 big pies. And it was delicious.
My God,
I will say.
yes.
But it takes all that time. And my son-in-law said, "Well, why don't you write a blog post about the history of key lime pie?"
Key lime pie,
Because
yes.
the keys are cut off from the mainland, maybe that's why sweetened condensed milk is used, because it was so hard to get
Oh, yes.
fresh anything.
Yeah,
Oh, that's
yeah.
a really good. That's a very interesting
Where
question.
the
So
thing-
I'm going to research it and write a blog post.
Look at that, yes. I belong to a group of retired men who we call ourselves the Romeos, retired old men eating out.
My father-in-law used to be one
They-
of
they-
them.
well, anyway, it's an international organization. They're all over the world, but we're in a local group, and we're all retired science teachers from the North Shore area. And one of the things we do is we go out to eat once a month, and we try to pick an ethnic restaurant different. So sometimes it's Italian, sometimes it's Japanese, something. It's just different restaurants that we find at different places. So I love to explore the different kinds of foods that there are, and we've enjoyed foraging, sort of.
There's such an abundance of choices in this country now. Well, it's ironic because eggplant and garlic sauce at your local Chinese restaurant is one of my favorites. But 100 years ago, people turned their noses up at eggplant. They thought it was, or at least part of the member of the nightshade family. People turned their noses up at
Yes.
it. But once the Italians and the Chinese came to this country, all of a sudden, we discovered that
it's edible.
not only is it edible, it's excellent. So there's such an abundance of choices here, from Persian to Japanese to Turkish, and now you can even buy sushi in the supermarket. I mean,
Yes.
that's amazing.
Yes, I know. Yeah.
When I was growing up, I didn't know what an artichoke looked like. We didn't have them in the store.
Yeah. My wife and I go out to eat every week, and somewhere different. And we used to go to different places out on Route 1 for Chinese food. And now we found a place locally in Stoneham at the Redstone Center, which is a small local place called the Tulip Lounge. And they have a buffet lunch for $12, and you can eat as much as you want. And they have 4 different tables, buffet tables, where a stream of dishes, and you can't believe the amount of selection that you have. That it's, normally you think of just pork fried rice and chicken wings, but they have a zillion choices. And so if you're
it's
interested,
dangerous, isn't it?
It is.
Buffets are dangerous for me.
Because you go back too many times. Yeah.
Yeah, I love Indian food. That's probably one of my favorites.
Really? Yes.
I love it. In fact, I'm hoping to go to India next year.
Uh-huh.
That's always been on my list.
Now that they have a lot of curry in their Indian food. No, yes,
Yeah, I think it all really depends on where in
Where.
India. It's a huge country.
Yeah.
And I'm willing to try it all.
Try it all, right? Try it all. Well, that's wonderful. I think we have explored a lot. Would you like to add some things that I haven't covered already, or you had some notes in front of you, or?
Well, I had notes in front of me in case you asked me a specific question. Oh my. No, I think you've asked a lot of good questions.
Yeah, it's just it's like the interview is like just a conversation over a cup of coffee, and we're just sort of general chit chat back and forth on what our interests are. So yeah, you've been a wonderful guest and very enthusiastic about your foods and your travel and things. So you visited a lot of places, and you brought back some ideas from all these places on what to cook. And I love the story you were telling me a few minutes ago, before we were on the air. When your children were younger, you put a map on the wall, and you zeroed in on different places on the map, and made foods from those places. So that was a wonderful idea on how to get your children involved in trying different foods.
Well, it was a great way to get them to try different foods. I don't say it backfired on me, but they love to travel so much that they're away a lot.
They're trying the different foods. Yeah. Well, hopefully the foods that they taste are safe and not too toxic. So
Actually, my eldest was on his way to India. He ended up in Nepal. And where did he said the best falafel he ever ate was in Nepal. And I thought, falafel in Nepal, but because a lot of Israelis travel the world after their army service, they end up in places all over the world.
Yes.
So that's one of the beauties of what's called the global village. We're part of a big planet, and we're not just stuck with the same old meat and potatoes every night.
And that's true, and it's nice that they have so many different food programs on TV now that you can sit in your living room and almost experience the different types of foods, even though you're not tasting them, you're looking at them, and hopefully someday you'll get the urge to make it yourself,
Mm-hmm.
or to buy some of the things and put them together. A lot of the food markets now, the grocery stores, have a selection of foreign foods now that you can pick.
Absolutely.
So it's not just the regular lettuce and tomato that's there anymore. There are some specialty foods that are available, and if you don't find them at the local food market, there are specialty food markets that you can go to
Yep.
and find some of the things that you might be interested in.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, my husband's a big radish fan.
Oh, really?
And I'll eat daikon radishes. I'm not particularly fond of the red radish.
Yes.
But it's available now, so you can get them all over.
Isn't that something? Now, if somebody wanted to reach you, they would be able to get you on your website, which is what?
It's carolgoodmankaufman.com.
carolgoodmankaufman.com, all one word.
All one word.
Okay. So
or
that's
or through the Facebook page.
on the Facebook page, which is the same thing, or you go on Facebook and look up
Peanut Peregrinations.
Peanut Peregrinations, or possibly you could look up Carol Goodman Kaufman.
That
too.
would be my personal website, but
Oh.
the Peanut Peregrinations is my writing website.
Yeah, okay. On Facebook, I mean, yeah, on Facebook. So that's great. So I'm so thrilled to have you come here and talk about food. You're making me hungry now. So I'll have to go home and think about what I can experiment with from the freezer.
Well, try that carrot recipe. It's easy and it's delicious.
I'm going to tell my wife about that. That's right. She's the cook in the family. I only observe and I eat.
As my husband said, in our house we're completely 50-50.
Yeah,
She does all the cooking, I do all the eating.
That is true. Well, we have come to the close of the interview. If anything you'd like to add?
Yes, I would like to add thank you so very much for inviting me. This has been a lot of fun.
This is great. Well, it's you're so enthusiastic about your interest in foods, and I'm glad to see that you are traveling and you're cooking and you're sharing all your delightful information with your family and whoever else is interested on your website and on your blogs, and also on the TV shows that you might appear on too. So they're all venues for exposing people to the wonders of food. So that sounds very good. Well, thank you very much. I'm going to close the program now.
Okay.
And I'd like to thank our listening audience. Remember, this is Mark's Musings, and every month we interview a local author. And today we were pleased to have Carol Goodman Kaufman. And please look up her website and look up her on Facebook. And we enjoyed her discussion today. And so we're hoping to see you next time. So with that, we're closing, and bye-bye now.